Hey everybody, I'm just out here at the backyard and I've got the chicken coop here and I've got to make a little bit of an adjustment. I'll explain that in just a second. But I thought this would be a cool opportunity to show you the chicken coop I built just last fall and why I set it up the way I did, etc. So I'm gonna make the repair and I'm also gonna give you a little bit of a tour of the chicken coop. First things first though, if I'm gonna work on this, I've got to let the girls out. And before I do that, I have to cover up this plant. Otherwise, for some reason, that's the one they just love to pick apart. So we're gonna use a wheelbarrow and tip it over the plant. We'll cover it up. As long as we make sure we uncover it before we're done, we'll be all good. Okay, over to the chicken coop. Come on, there you go. Sunrise must be inside, laying an egg. Oh, there she is. All right, there's the girls. Here's the coop itself, right, where they can hang out. Obviously, this is the box where they lay, and they do it like really well. We've never had an issue. We put some of these wooden eggs in there, so you can see the 3 darker ones are wooden eggs, and those were in the beginning to kind of prompt them to lay there, but they also seem to have the added benefit of preventing them from eating their own eggs, which hens can do if you don't collect their eggs very quickly. I've never really had that problem, but a lot of people do. So by having those wooden eggs, if they ever do kind of peck at them, they're like, oh no, these aren't anything I can eat. So anyway, back to this at hand. So they don't hang out inside almost ever. And we weren't sure why, because before we had this other chicken coop, I'll show it to you here, and we put a little bit of a chicken run around it, and they hung out inside there a lot. And so I was wondering what was going on. And what I figured out is I think they're getting way too hot. I don't have any sort of window. I just have that door. And so they don't get decent airflow. So today I'm gonna cut a window here in the top. I mean, it's been months of this. Even in the winter, they hung out only outside. And I kind of get it. It's kind of fun. They love to roost and stuff. So being on these sticks is a lot of fun for them. So that's what I'm gonna do. But before I go and start cutting that window, let's start with a little bit of a tour. So here you go, you can see basically the whole chicken coop, chicken run combo all in one. I built it to be 4 feet by 8 feet. That worked out really well for the 3 chickens that we've had. We first bought a small chicken coop, again, the same one I mentioned before, real cheap one off Amazon. It said it could handle 3 or 4 chickens, but really that was only as a little coop, right? They still needed some area outside the coop to run around in. You couldn't just close them in there and expect them to hang out in that tiny space. At least I wouldn't, maybe at one of these chicken processing places, they're cool with that, but I'm not, right? So I wanted them to have a bit of a run. So I modeled this a little bit after that chicken coop, mixed with a chicken run, chicken coop concept that my parents built over at their place for many more chickens. They could easily have 12, 14, probably 16, maybe 20 chickens in theirs if they really wanted to, normally up to about a dozen. So that's the size I went with. The coop itself, the enclosure, is a bit smaller. It's about 2 feet by 3 feet plus the box here on the outside. Now let me show you some of the cool things that I built into this. First of all, something that my dad doesn't have on his that some of you might be wondering about is why did I put a roof inside over the little chicken coop? Why didn't I just build it all the way to the top, give them more inside space to roost and stuff? I did that because on our old chicken coop, we had that little coop and then we built a run around it, and I, enclosed the top, but just with mesh and stuff. But we found that one of their favorite places to be was literally on the roof of the old coop. And so my wife insisted, she's like, you have to build a roof on the inside. And they do. All 3 of them hang out together on the roof of this chicken coop like all the time. It's one of their favorite places to be. So that's what I have. So it's really kind of cool because they have a lot of levels inside there. You can tell they hang out there a lot because there's always poop up there. We clean it off a ton. I built, the box here for them to lay eggs in. It's on hinges, makes sense, so I can open it up. I was gonna put a latch on it. I haven't really needed to. Animals have a hard time getting in there because this lid's heavy enough. I built all this out of OSB. It's a lot cheaper than other sheathing, so I just went with OSB. Then I built this feeder box. This is based off of a similar concept that our friends over in eastern Idaho have. They have a coop like this, and it's pretty self-sustaining. So in this box, believe it or not, I can fit a 50-pound bag of food. Normally I'll do about half a bag at a time, just in case I run into any problems. You can see the pellet feed that I have right now. I sometimes switch back and forth between grains and stuff. But then on the front, and this is where you got to see, on the front, basically I just, out of wood, I cut holes and made that a lot like the metal feeder that I had before. So I got 4 holes there, just cut out of the wood. At first I thought I might need a little bit more friction, that it would just flow too easily. And so I actually made sort of a shelf there, and I stuck that metal feeder in there so that the feed could come in one side and out the other. But it was too much friction, and so the feed wasn't getting through. So then when I removed that metal thing and I just put essentially that board over the top with holes in it, this has been perfect. The only time we ever have trouble with the feed getting through is if it gets wet, which doesn't normally happen because we have this roof over the top. It's just not going to get wet. But this spring, when the sprinklers first came on, the sprinkler over here was just hitting just inside there, which made the chicken coop super smelly because all the ground there's got, you know, poop all over it. But also it was getting some of the food a little bit wet, so it would swell and get stuck right there in the bottom. So we were every day having to come kind of clean it out. And anyway, I had to fix that problem pretty fast. All right, I'm gonna show you the next really cool feature, but first, let's get to work a little bit on cutting this hole. For that, I'm just gonna drill a hole to get started in a corner and then use a jigsaw to just cut out a nice little rectangle. And hopefully that will resolve the issue and they'll like hanging out inside. I drilled out that first hole from the inside because I do have a couple of boards going across to roost on the inside, and I wanted to make sure that the bottom of the window was above, hey Sunrise, how's it going? I wanted to make sure that it was above those roosting sticks, and so I wanted to do it from the inside for the first one. So that's the first. Now I can use the jigsaw. Okay, it's gonna get a little noisy in here, Sunrise. All right, I'm gonna start with that. We'll see how that does, see if they start to hang out in there a little bit more, especially when it's like cold or windy or something outside. They still seem to hang out outside. They seem to prefer it. All right, now back to the tour. The next thing's not gonna seem like that big of a deal, but these are literally just branches from the willow tree in our yard that I have going across. You can see that one's on the far side over there, screwed in to the post. And then likewise, I have one screwed in on this end. And they just hang out there all the time. I have that short one down there that they climb on a bit, but it's also supporting that PVC pipe. We've also got some of these little toys, a little swing. They don't really roost on the swing because it moves a lot, but they do play around. It's kind of fun. Don't know how necessary those are, but they're kind of fun. They also roost on this board. This board is actually a support. You can see that there's a post here and it's supporting this. It's kind of like the small beam. Supporting some of the weight of that. So it allowed me to not have a post on the ground underneath that corner, which is kind of cool. So it's much more open space for them inside. All right, the next really cool thing on this chicken coop, this is also something I got from my friends over in eastern Idaho. They just used a water container of some kind. They hung theirs on the back of the coop. I'm using a 5-gallon bucket right now, just sitting on blocks. I thought about building a platform for it. I haven't yet, but I can fill this all the way up with water. And then I have a 1-inch PVC pipe. And then on the bottom of that pipe, if you look really closely, zoom in here a little bit, you can see those little red things. Those are little nipples I just bought at a farm supply store nearby, D&B Supply. They're red because red's a color that's supposed to be attractive to chickens and birds in general. They're supposed to see it and want to peck at it. Although for some reason my birds tend to peck at green a lot more. They like leaves and grass and stuff. We give them red and half the time they don't. Although they love tomatoes. Not the plant, but the tomato fruit itself. Anyway, so these red nipples, I just drill little holes for each of those and screw them into the PVC pipe, and the water flows and it's awesome. Now there's a downside to this one. That was in the winter when it got really cold. I had a heater for this that sat in the 5-gallon bucket and the water never froze. But in the pipe, it froze. And so I was coming out all the time. I ended up having to just use a normal chicken waterer, and I just have to replace it every day. So either I need to run some kind of heater coil down the length of that PVC pipe, or I could rethink it. Another way to do it is to put the watering bucket inside the coop up, so it's either hanging or sitting up on top of something, and then you can put nipples around the bottom of a bucket. So if I were to use this bucket as an example, I would put them like right there, right there, right there, just kind of near the bottom, but on the sides, and then they'll come drink out of the bucket and you get the same benefit. The upside of the way I've done it is I can do all my feeding and all my watering from outside of this whole chicken run. Just makes it really easy to maintain, makes it so I don't have to go in there all the time every time I need to feed them and water them, like ever. But the cool thing is, even if you have to do this on the inside, if you use a big bucket like this, that water lasts a couple of weeks for these 3 chickens. You know, for the dozen or so chickens my parents have at their place, it's gonna last about a quarter of the time that this one does, but easily 2 full weeks out of this every single time. Kind of nice that I don't have to fill it up that often. So even if you had to go inside the coop to fill it, it's just not that big of a deal to only do every couple weeks. I definitely let the chickens out a lot more often than that. So for all of you who have chickens, or all of you who want to have chickens, first of all, I'd love to hear your feedback on this coop design. What do you think of it? Does it seem like a good idea? Are there other things you think that I missed? Are there things you think I maybe did wrong? On the flip side of that, for any of you who are, again, interested or considering getting chickens, or have questions of any kind about the chicken coop, things I maybe didn't show very closely, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to follow up and be able to provide you with all the information I can, whether it's about chickens or anything else preparedness. Just let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.